G'day guys, it's Bruce here. Today I'm going to be mucking around and having a bit of a test and a play with dash cams for motorcycles. I've got a dash cam in my car. I've had a dash cam in my car probably now for about 6 months, and I've sort of front and rear cam 1080p, and I thought it would be a good thing to put onto my motorbike since there's so many close encounters, especially here in Brisbane. We're forever looking on the forums and seeing people having problems with cars that have backed into them or cut them off and knocked them off and then run away. So I thought, well, if I can set a dash cam up on my bike and it's going from the moment I start riding, well then that's probably a good thing, and if one of those accidents happens, at least I'm going to have a chance of actually getting that person's number plate and getting their details. So a while ago I did a little bit of research on motorcycle dash cams, and I had an idea of sort of things that I wanted for a dash cam. Obviously I wanted something that records all the time. I thought, and I wanted something that obviously does the typical dash cam stuff, like so if you have an accident it records it, and ideally if someone bumped your bike it would start recording and record that. But since thinking about that, I thought that's probably only going to work in certain circumstances, because if you have a front and rear cam, then if someone bumps your bike from the side, which is a typical scenario if you're in a car park, then probably you're not going to capture those details, which is a bit of a shame. But that would have been nice to do that, but probably not going to be possible unless you have a 360-degree camera somewhere, which most motorbikes are not going to have. So I've sort of got, obviously it had to be waterproof. That was the other thing, because I wanted to be able to mount this, and I did not want to have to be taking it on and off my bike all the time. I just wanted it on my bike. I wanted it doing its job every time I ride my bike without me having to think about it. Whereas my normal action cameras, obviously I'd have to turn those on, record and put them on my bike and mount them and so on. So I wanted something that was on there all the time. And the other thing I wanted 1080p. I didn't know what the quality is going to be like. It's a little bit hard to tell, because 1080p, even though someone can say something's 1080p, the quality can still vary a fair bit at that level. So, like say a good example would be if you've got a GoPro dash cam, and your GoPro dash cam as opposed to a Chinese dash cam, there's usually a big, huge variety of, difference in the way it actually captures the footage and how good it actually looks at the end of the day. And usually GoPros, like I've got GoPros and other cams here, my GoPro and my Sony are pretty good, my Olympus is pretty good, but I've experimented with other dash cams that just weren't very good at all. Sorry, not dash cams, action cams that weren't very good. So I suspect it's the same with dash cams. I know my Navman dash cam that I run in my car, the quality is certainly not as good as the GoPro, and the night quality of it was, I would say it was lacking. Like if you had an accident at night, if you were in the city, it would be fine. If you were out on a country road, like we had a car run out on us on a country road and came out of a side street, just didn't look and came out right in front of us. And when I rewound the footage to see if I could get the plate, I couldn't get the plate of the car because it was too dark out in those country roads. There's not enough street lighting to actually be able to do it. So that was the other thing I was looking for. I was looking for low light, something that could handle low light. So what I found was that most people were using these Blueskysea dual cameras. This seemed to be the one that was popular. So I bought one of these and I thought, well, we'll give it a go, we'll see what it's like. It will be interesting to compare the footage to GoPro and also to my other dash cam in my car. So I think what I'll do is I'll do 3 runs. I'll do a run on the bike with this camera going. I'll do a run on the bike with the GoPro going in the same area, and I'll also do a run in the car down the same area, and we can compare the footage and we can see what all three are like, which will be interesting to do. I think that that level of detail generally is not very good in most videos that I've seen around dash cams. So now what I'll do is I'll quickly show you what actually comes with this camera, so you can have a look and you get an idea of what you actually get. You actually get quite a bit for your money, I think. But of course it's going to be the quality at the end of the day. We want the quality footage, so that's the most important thing, and the ability to mount it easily. So I've got a battery here at the moment. I've got this hooked up to a battery. Everything is just plug and play. So I'll show you here how it all works. You basically just plug these plugs together. They're pretty tight. They're watertight. Well, they're supposed to be watertight. They have like little arrows on the ends of them here. So you can see the little arrows there. And basically you line those 2 arrows up and you just plug the 2 together. So with this unit, there's no soldering involved. There's no mucking around. It's pretty much plug and play operation. I bought this extra piece for this. This is a GPS tracker, and the idea is that you can overlay your footage onto Google Maps. There's an app. I haven't tried the app yet, obviously, because I haven't had this plugged in, but there is an app that you can use to overlay your footage onto the top of Google Maps. The main unit itself, which has its on off, and then it has various modes for getting into the menus that are on here, which are all pretty straightforward. Time, date, those kinds of things. It comes with another button that goes up to your handlebars. This would mount on your handlebars, and so what would happen is if you want to take a photo of something, you can push this very quickly. One push will take a photo. So the info on this stuff is 2 megapixel Sony imaging devices actually inside the actual camera themselves, which seem quite nice, but I guess the thing about that is that even if you've got Sony CCD sensors inside the cameras, it's still only going to be as good as the actual processor itself. So the processing in the actual main unit itself has got to still be good. If the processing in this unit is not so great, well then we're still going to have it. It's still not going to be that great, even though you've got those nicer resolution sensors in it. It does f1.8 to f2.8, so that's f-stops. Anyone who understands photography will understand what that means. F1.8 is pretty reasonably low light, but you know, it remains to be seen what it's like at that level. I would suspect that with a small camera like this, with a small lens, that probably once you get down to after dusk, I suspect that it's not going to be that great, but we'll see. 130-degree angle, so you know, side to side, 130 degrees. 1920 by 1080p or 1280 by 720p, and that's at 27.5 frames per second, which I thought was a bit odd because typically I'd be recording at 30 frames a second, but again, this might be down to the processing power of the actual unit itself. H.264, which is great if you want to upload your footage to YouTube or something like that. You don't have to do much manipulation when it's already recording like that. Photo resolution, so if you want to take a photo, there's 1 megapixel, 2 megapixels, or 5 megapixels. The photo format is a JPEG, so there's no RAW format or anything like that, but JPEG is probably more than good enough. It has a mic wide on a controller, a speaker on the actual unit itself if you want to play your footage back. It takes up to 128 gigabytes max as a memory stick. And there's no memory stick included in this package, by the way. You need to buy your own memory stick and include it into the package, which I've done. I've got a high-speed Samsung 64 gigabyte card in there. The G sensor has a G sensor in here, which has low, medium, or high levels of knock sensitivity. So I haven't tried those modes yet. We'll try those out. We'll see what they're like. Emergency lock support. So if there's an accident, it senses there's an accident, it senses there's a knock, it'll automatically record that footage and hold on to it. GPS logger, which I've got on this, was an optional accessory. It didn't cost a whole lot more to have that, so I thought might as well have it, because then you can get the speed and everything else off your thing as well. IP67 rating, so waterproof to IP67. 2.4 inch screen, that's your screen itself, at 960 by 480 pixels or dots. So the screen itself is not incredibly high resolution. When I've had a look at the screen so far, it's average. It's definitely not as good as a really good quality cell phone screen or anything like that, but then it's, you know, it's built to a price, so you've got to expect that, I guess. Power input, which is important, 12 to 24 volts. So if you've got a 24 volt system on your bike, or perhaps if you're running this in a car or a truck or something like that, there's support for both those voltages, which is kind of handy. Now it says power adapter input, power adapter output, which is interesting because it says 5 volts at 2 amps. So 2 amps is quite a bit. 2 amps would be good if you were charging, so for example, if you were using this to charge your cell phone, fast setting is typically 2 amps or around 2 amps. It has a removable 500 milliamp hour lithium-ion battery, which is built into the unit, so even if this does get disconnected from your main battery, it will still continue to record. It won't stop recording. I don't know how long it could record for, but I would imagine it would be a reasonable amount of time. One of the things we'll probably do actually is put a multimeter on this and actually check this and see how well it can do. And this is an important one for Australia. It can work from negative 10 degrees in the cold, so if you're up in the mountains it would be fine typically, and to up to 40 degrees. So that's important, because I've had problems with cameras in the past, certainly my Olympus, when we started getting up to 38 degrees around here in the summertime, and I was trying to record that camera. I couldn't record the camera, it kept overheating and shutting down. So I would hope that 40 degrees would be good enough for Brisbane. I think for most of the time it's probably okay. Yeah, so with this little button, what you can do is you can push this once and you can record a snapshot, 5 megapixel snapshot or 1 megapixel snapshot, depending on how you want to do this. If you hold it down for, I think it's 5 seconds or 3 seconds, something like that, then it will lock the video that's actually in progress at that time. So if you particularly want to hold something, you need to actually physically lock this down. So you would hold that and you would lock it down to do that. Whether that's practical on the bike, I'm not sure. I guess you've got to have this in fingers reach where you can get it pretty easily, because if someone does something dumb in front of you, you want time to pull over and actually be able to lock that footage down. And it records in, you can set the minute intervals as to how much it records before it loops and records over itself, and the maximum this can do is 10 minutes. So I think it was 1 minute, 2 minutes, and so on, right up to 10 minutes. I've got mine set for 10 minutes. And then it comes with various mounts. So you get the 2 cameras, which come with a nice little protector on the front of them, and a sticky label on the back of them here. And they're both the same, there's nothing different. They've got about, I don't know, about a foot's worth of footage on those. A foot's worth of cord on those, I should say. It comes with the power supply, which has got like a little inverter which inverts it down to the correct battery voltage. Comes with a USB power cord if you want to use USB with it. It comes with an extended cord for the camera will go to the rear of the bike. This is, I think, 3 meters long, so it's more than long enough to do most things. And it comes with a couple of shorter cords here, which I think are 1 meter long each, and they would be more than enough to do everything you want. So unless you had a bike that was, 5 meters long, you wouldn't have a problem. This would be good enough. And then it comes with a whole bunch of 3M labels. One here is like a sticky label. One here that's a Velcro style label. These are all 3M, or they're labeled as 3M. Various camera mount labels here. The main unit mount and some spare ones. Then it comes with a spare camera mount as well. These are made of I think that might actually be made of metal. Yeah, it's a metal, so that's actually made of an aluminium or something like that and been anodized, painted. So you get a spare one of those in case you break it. And various holders. So this is a holder for the back of the unit. Handlebar mount. And then you get a handful of various GoPro style mounts here, which I would probably not use, but you get them all the same. Handlebar mount. And these mounts actually seem like reasonable quality. They seem okay. The only thing that I would say with mounting cameras with those type of mounts is that would be okay for mounting the main unit, but I wouldn't use those to mount the camera. Typically, because you're traveling along and your shock's so much harder, if you get a bit of shake and you have mounts, say for example, this kind of situation, what happens is the little bit of movement that you get on these mounts itself gets exaggerated by the cameras, and so the cameras typically look like they're shaking a lot, and I would imagine a unit like this doesn't have a whole lot of stabilization, so it certainly wouldn't have the stabilization of a GoPro 7 or something like that. So ideally the best thing to do is to actually be mounting the camera up using its main mounts here, and get this as close as you can and as solidly as you can on the bike. If you get this really solidly on the bike, you won't have a problem. If you don't get this solidly on the bike, you could have a problem with shaking and all that kind of carry on. It comes with a bunch of mounting hardware here, various screws and things. I don't know what the quality is like. They look like they might be stainless actually, some of this stuff. Possibly it is, possibly it's not. We'll figure it out. We won't really know until we sort of see whether it gets rusty or not. It might just be steel, but they look reasonable. Zip ties for zip tying the cables together. So pretty much everything you need comes with this unit. It's all there. Now what I'll do is I'll turn the unit on, I'll show you the unit, and then we can look at actually getting this thing mounted up onto the bike. So this is the main unit here. We can switch it on. Now it's got a little protective screen over the top of this at the moment, which I haven't pulled off yet. Okay, so the GPS has come on, the 2 cameras are there going. Obviously they're just upside down and they've got their covers on at the moment, so the quality is not going to be that great, but it's okay. And then what we can do is we can switch between different modes. Oh, there we go, we can switch between the cameras here. So there we are, switching between the cameras. Here's the modes there, various modes that you can go through. You can cycle through those here, where you can set the whole thing up. I've pretty much already set all the time code and everything up on this. It's all pretty straightforward. There's nothing too exciting here really to see. That's pretty much it. So what we'll do now is I'm going to start getting my bike stripped down a little bit, get a few of the seat and other bits and pieces off it, get the tank cover off it, and we'll see if we can fit this thing up and actually get it working on the bike. We'll get the cameras mounted, get the unit mounted. I think I'm going to mount the unit underneath my back seat on my bike because that's kind of out of the way, and it's probably the best place for me to mount this thing up, I think. Anyway, let's get stuck into it and get onto it because that's the next thing to do. Okay, it's a new day here. We ran out of time last night doing this job because we were sort of getting towards the evening, and I just started too late by the time I found all the materials I need. So I've been out to Bunnings this morning, bought some bits and pieces that I needed, this kind of stuff, flat bar, some angle bars so I could make some brackets if I needed to, and I'd run out of that stuff, and it is kind of handy. And last night I spent a bit of time working out how to mount the cameras and where I was going to mount them, and I'll show you what I've done, where I've mounted those cameras, how I've mounted them up. I've decided also that I'm going to mount my center auxiliary device as well, which I'll show you a little bit later, because I might as well do it all at the same time since I'm mounting stuff up, and that means that I can then run an external device to that, so I could run a radar detector to it, or I could run an auxiliary CV or whatever I want. Anyway, you could run any other source I want into any other sound source. So that's real handy. And the good thing about the center is that alerts and things like that, like if it's coming from your cell phone and stuff, it all comes in real time to your helmet, so there's no delays at all. And one of the things you don't want when you're, when you want an alert coming to your helmet that's kind of important, like if you're running Waze, for example, or something like that, you want to make sure that you've got alerts that are coming to you in real time. You do not want to delay on that stuff. So anyway, so I've got the cameras mounted. I've got a test rig set up on the bike. I can show you quickly now how it looks and how it works, and then I'm going to move on with starting to conceal the wires and stuff like that. And then I'll begin mounting the center as well around the same time, since I've got everything apart. The other thing I've been playing with actually is I've been playing with the tracking device as well again. So I'm going to do an update on the tracking device soon, because I've had some new discoveries around that stuff as well. So I've got the front camera just mounted just underneath here, just in here. You can kind of see it sitting there. It's a little bit hard because we're facing towards the light here to see everything properly. But that's the camera there. It's mounted up. It's mounted pretty solidly on there. In fact, I'm just missing a screw in here, so there's a little bit of movement there. But I think that's going to be okay there. I'm a little bit concerned because this is just plastic, and I'm just a little bit concerned about this sort of moving around and perhaps creating too much juddering and stuff like that. But I'll have to get it finished, take it for a ride, and see how the footage is. And if the footage is not good enough, then I'll have to think about mounting the camera somewhere a little bit more solid. Maybe I'll have to make another mount or something like that. But I think this will probably be okay. By the time I get the bolt in there, I think it'll be all right. And I've mounted the main unit under the tail of the bike underneath the rear seat. I've got a bracket in here, and the idea was that what I wanted to be able to do is I wanted to be able to come around here like this, and I wanted to actually be able to switch it on, which I'll show you now. So that's the unit powered up. That's the rear camera. You can switch between the cameras. So front camera, there we go, front camera, rear camera. And then it has a picture-in-picture mode, which is front and rear, or rear and front, depending on which way you want to go, or just a single camera by itself. So there we have it. It's all ready to go, ready to record. We just got to get the wiring in here. Now I'm going to mount the center unit on this side, so there's not going to be a lot of room under my tail for my locks and things in future, but that's okay. And I've got to run all the wire externally, all inside, make it nice and tidy, run it down underneath the tank and stuff like that. I've got the tank cover off at the moment. The rear camera is a little bit troublesome to find a place to mount it, so I've mounted it just on the top of the tail tidy here, just off to that side, so you can see it just in here. I've angled it down a little bit because I didn't want it sort of angled up right into the sun, and that seems to be pretty good. And once I get the bike off the stands, I'll be able to have a proper look at it and play around with this. I've got the wire running up underneath the tail tidy here at the moment. I haven't pinned this all down yet, but I will. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's probably the most solid mount. I'm pretty happy with that mount. I mean, the only thing that I was a little bit concerned about is just that people can see the camera. But, it's really, really hard to completely conceal a camera on a bike, especially a bike like this, which has a pretty small tail. And there's not really a lot of places to put it. And I experimented with putting it various places, and I was thinking about mounting it up underneath here or something like that, but then your number plate and everything's in the way, and the tyres in the way, and everything's in the way, and plus if I'm riding in the rain, all the water's going to be streaming off this tyre, and I don't have a guard on the back here at the moment, which doesn't help. So I think probably where it is up there is probably the best position for it at the moment. So I'll get the wires tucked away, and then I'll come back and we'll go from there. Okay, I've finally finished installing everything on the bike now. I installed quite a bit more than what I initially planned to do, but I'm pretty happy with the end result. But it did take most of a day because I ended up doing quite a bit of wiring, soldering, making up plugs, making brackets and things to mount everything up. So everything's mounted here. I think that probably needs to be down a little bit. I'm hoping that these cameras are going to hold up here enough. We'll see. Camera on the back. And the controls, I've moved all the controls to the front. So we have a controller for the center so we can switch channels. Controller for the locking down, taking photos with the front and rear cameras and locking down the video footage. And it also shows you when it's running. And it's all pretty stealthy otherwise, it's all pretty good. I'll show you the rear of the bike. Blueskysea DVR, which is here. So this is the black box that basically captures all the footage from the cameras, from the front and rear cameras. Each time we ride, it'll just automatically record. I don't have to think about that. My center unit, which at the moment I'll have to turn on manually. One other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put front and rear USBs in here, but I need to buy a couple first. So I'm going to mount one at the front of the bike and one at the back. So if I need to USB charge my phone or something on the fly, I can do it, and I want those all to be 2 amp charging ports as well, so that we can do fast charge. Certainly the one at the front has to be that anyway, and then that means that then I can charge this while I'm riding. At the moment it has a battery that lasts about 3 days, but I really want that to be able to charge while I'm riding, and I also want it to automatically come on, and I think once I've got the USB on there, I think I can automatically turn this on. Anyway, we'll figure that out as we go. I'm not 100 on that. I'm not 100% sure how I can turn that on or off at the moment without physically lifting the rear tail off, which I don't want to have to do too often. And that's about it really. So everything's wired back, everything comes back here, everything turns on automatically minus the center unit. And we're going to go for a test shortly and see how it goes. Okay, this is the front dash cam footage. It's kind of at the level that I expected it to be at, really. It's not the best. It's certainly not as good as GoPro. It's not quite as good as my center, and my center is not particularly good. It tends to, well, to me, when I'm looking at the footage, it tends to make the footage look like it's almost like it's got a paint effect on it or something like that. It's just the clarity is just not quite there, and that fudging of the pixels that kind of creates that type of look is just simply down to the fact that the actual unit that actually does the processing and the codec that's used and the way the codec is used is just too compressed. It's just got a little bit too much compression in it. It could also be a little bit to do with the frame rates, but I doubt that because it's close enough to 30 frames a second. It's just not quite clear enough. And what I'll do shortly, I'll show you the rear cam. One other thing with this front cam is this front cam actually, I think, is still getting a little bit more shake than the rear cam, because the rear cam is slightly clearer, but still not quite good enough, and I'll show you that now. Now the rear cam footage, the camera is just a little bit more steady on the bike because it's pretty much bolted almost directly to the frame, and it's quite steady. It's still got that kind of painted kind of look effect to it, but it's definitely clearer than the camera footage from the other direction. And I put it down to it just being that little bit more steady. Now as a comparison, this is center footage, and what I'll do in a minute is I'll show the center footage in conjunction with the other footage side by side so you can see the difference, and we'll do some still frames as well from where that car went past, and I'll show you that as well. So we'll do that shortly. You can see the center, and the center, I wouldn't even say the center is a particularly good camera. The center is a pretty average camera as well, but it still isn't good enough, I don't think, to capture the level of detail that you want to capture. You really need something at the level of GoPro. So the problem I really have with the dash cam is that it can't capture enough clear footage to get a number plate off a car. It's too compressed. It's got too much compression, and it's too hard to grab that level of detail. You can kind of tell what the car is, and there's a situation there where we've got a Hyundai car there, and you can see with my center, which is not even a particularly good cam, we can tell that the car's a center. We can even slightly read the number plate. With the next Mazda that goes past, we can tell that it's a Mazda, but we can't read the number plate even on the center. And the next test I'll do will definitely be the GoPro. I think I'll put the GoPro on this as well, and we'll see how the GoPro is. But the GoPro for sure is better. It's like leaps ahead of the other two cams. It's so much better than the center. And the center, really, I just use it because it's a convenient helmet cam, and it's good because you can record audio straight onto the thing, which is also very handy to be able to do. But from a cam perspective, it's not the best. You'd probably be better to use, you know, Cine Prism or something like that. But there's not a lot of point anyway. You might as well just use a GoPro if you're going to do that, if you're looking for that kind of footage. But from a dash cam perspective, I would have to say this is a bit of a failure, really. It's good enough to tell the make, model, and color of a car, and that's about as good as it is. It's not really much good aside from that. So, you know, I mean, Mazda 3, for example, there must be a million of those in Australia. If you got hit by a blue Mazda 3, it could be one of 10 million, you know. So from an evidence point of view, this is not a really great product. It's just very average even from a ride recording perspective, even though it could do that. Again, it's not very good because the footage is too compressed. So yeah, a bit of a shame, but that's kind of where it is with this one anyway. So it's good to be able to test them side by side. It's good to be able to see that, and it's good to be able to see the level that you actually get in the end product, because it's hard to tell from reviews a lot of the time. I'm trying to be unbiased in my review. I had good hopes for this, but you know, I sort of think for a couple of $100, you know, $250 even maybe, you're going to be hard pressed to get anything that can do a half decent job, certainly for a motorbike anyway, that's waterproof and everything else.